stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The roll call, please.
Mayor Bailey, Mr. Bateman.
Here.
Mr. Blair.
Here.
Mr. Hart.
Here.
Mr. Ori.
Here.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Here.
Mr. Ping.
Here. Someone want to move to excuse?
Move to excuse Mayor Bailey and permit Mr. Hart to appear remotely.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Mr. Hart.
Yes.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Mr. Ping.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everybody here in attendance tonight. We have with us our city manager, Dave Kennedy, assistant city manager, Corey Wright, clerk of council, Misty Clark, director of finance, Mark Medler, assistant city solicitor, Jeff Levine, and police chief Gabrielson is here, and former city council members, Pat Mays and Todd Osborne. So thank you, everybody. We'll proceed to open forum. And I think there is one person who signed up, and that's Evan Stevenson. Aaron, I'm sorry.
I know I do. Sorry for my shortness. My name is Erin Stevenson. I reside at 700 Park Avenue. We're right next to the MacArthur Apartments, and we've been there for about a year now. And then during the duration of the year that we have been there, there's been an ongoing issue of the tenants not stopping at the stop sign. They don't even look before or slow down. And there's been several occasions where they've come very close to hitting my car, and I have 3 young children, 12, 9, and 6. I'm not sure what the solution is for it. I've contacted the police department, and they said that there is no place for them to discreetly hide in order to detect the ongoing issue. They are aware of it, but there's not much they can do since they can't, quote unquote, hide. I'm suggesting maybe speed bumps or a flashing sign, or I'm not even sure what the situation or what the resolution is other than those two. But I just know that it's an ongoing issue. There are some repeat offenders. I notice the same car almost every time doing it, which I can gladly get their license plate number if necessary. And also an ongoing issue is the noise ordinance. People are bouncing their basketball at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and waking us up. The music is always blaring. So it's the one thing we don't like about our house is the tenants next to us. Just last week, there was a young child in the top floor of the apartment complex. They took out the screen and she was dangling from it. And then I was watching more closely. She then switched and took turns with her younger brother, who was 3 or 4, and he was also dangling from the apartment complex window. So I finally spoke up and said, "Hey, stop doing that." And a few minutes later, the screen was put back up. So it's just a very ongoing issue. The aroma of pot is pretty much ongoing. So it's definitely taking our property value down, and less enjoyable to go outside.
Okay, well, thank you for making us aware of it. I'm glad you've got some ideas that I think maybe the chief can address if you want now, or with the city manager consultation and the chief, they can get back to you on this perhaps.
Thank you.
I'll get with you if you'd like. We can step outside if you
Yeah.
don't want to. I'll meet you outside and we can definitely talk about a couple of things real quick.
Thank you for coming. Okay, we have no minutes, but that was in large part due to July 4th and some health issues by our clerk. So we'll have those at the next meeting. I guess at this point in time, we should have a second reading of a couple ordinances.
Ordinance amending the City of Loveland's historic preservation regulations.
Okay. Anybody have any discussion on that? This was presented at our last meeting and spoken to. You want to introduce?
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
One, two,
Call the
call
roll.
the roll. Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Pink,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman.
Yes.
Ordinance 72 is adopted by a vote of 6 to 0. Excuse me.
Do you want to go introduce the next one then?
Ordinance dedicating city-owned property located on Railroad Avenue as public right-of-way for the widening, expansion, and relocation of Harrison Avenue.
Likewise, this had a first reading the last meeting and some discussion, but if there's any more necessary, speak up. If
Move to approve.
not, yeah, move to. Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yes.
Ordinance 73 is adopted by a vote of 6 to 0.
Thank you. So those were second readings. Now we have some ordinances that are first readings. Do you want to mention the first one? It has to do with zoning,
Yeah,
and I believe Corey will introduce it, and there should be a memo that was in the packet for it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Phelps. Thank you. So we have we are proposing requesting a 180-day moratorium on smoke, tobacco, electronic cigarette, vaping, and CBD business uses. So currently, establishments that specialize in these are just treated like retail uses. Unfortunately, though, a lot of these uses derive a significant portion, more than 50% of their revenue from the specific sale of vaping and e-cigarettes. There's a whole different host of terms that are used for that. And so they really can be differentiated in that regard. The demand has grown really exponentially in that. And unfortunately, the expansion of the popularity has not been without consequence, particularly among our youth. The CDC, the Surgeon General, there's been a host of different studies on that these things are really, because they're so ubiquitous, that they're in so many different shapes and sizes, they often can be disguised as other types of devices. It really lends toward abuse by underage persons. And so for that, when you have something like that, it can be a problem. There's been increasing studies that demonstrate that, with this underage use, because they're so attractive in that regard, and it's growing, it's getting worse despite the efforts of regulators and the efforts of schools and communities throughout the country. Because these shops are so frequent and they're so readily available, it continues to accelerate. So, bringing that issue home to Loveland, we received a letter from Superintendent Broadwater, which was linked in the packet, and that vaping is the number one disciplinary issue for the schools across all age spectrums, according to Mr. Broadwater, and has pleaded with the city to do something. So what can we do right now? Well, like we did with our commercial recreational uses, with other moratoriums that we've had, the first real option here is to set a 180-day moratorium on any new application that would qualify under, this, on smoke, vape, e-cigarette, the whole 9 yards on that. We'll establish a moratorium on that. That sort of stays that and gives the Planning and Zoning Commission opportunity to review regulations to appropriately regulate and or restrict these uses further. And I think that, based on the letter from Mr. Broadwater, he states it is imperative that we as a community do everything possible to curtail the uses of these devices, as well as educate our students, parents, and the community the dangers associated with them. The cooperation between the City of Loveland School District and the city will strengthen the commitment to curtailing the use of these devices. So that's sort of paraphrasing a little bit, but you can hear the urgency in his letter. And so with that, I would recommend that City Council take action to approve and adopt this ordinance via emergency, which will mean it'll be in effect immediately, establishing a 180-day moratorium on these specific uses. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion? Anybody want to be heard on it?
Are there any vape shops in Loveland now?
We have, for the best we can tell, we have one over near the Chili Hut, but there are tons of them around. And I can tell you that as retail space comes and goes, they are a very frequent use that does backfill usually retail, like what I would call maybe a B class retail space, because they're able to go in. They have relatively low overhead. They get in, they get the product. They don't do a lot of improvements. You'll see them in every strip center that's sort of going through maybe a resurgence or maybe a decline in resurgence. We did do some analysis on that. There's several nearby in Sims Township. I know that Miami Township has had an issue with them as well. And I anticipate, with our retail space that we have, while it's limited, we still have high traffic counts. So the likelihood is we could see more. So.
Good.
So Mr. Wright, I just have a couple questions. So this was I agree with the 180-day moratorium. I think that's the right first step to delve into this. Looking into it a little bit from my perspective, a lot of places have outright banned the sale of these types of products, with exceptions of those that are nicotine flavored, using it as a healthier alternative to smoking tobacco. But that's not what we're talking about here, correct? This is more like using zoning to try to restrict the sale of with businesses that have revenue that's over 50% in these products. I just want to make sure that the distinction is that we're not there. These products may be available at other retail locations. What we're talking about is sites that are dedicated essentially to the sale of those products.
Yes, and so they're fundamentally, you do have general retailers that do offer those, cessation devices and other things like that. I mean, you'll see them in a pharmacy, you'll see them in, gas stations. But again, of course, 50% of their operating revenue is not derived from that. It may make up a very small increment of their overall business revenue for that location. This would be driven specifically at those specific uses and using zoning, because it fundamentally is a land use issue, that is the most appropriate vehicle to do that, and then use the zoning code to, define that. What is that use? Well, we've sort of described that, and then to go through the districts and say, and mirror what's also been, other communities are mirroring this. I can actually state that Miami Township is taking a very similar approach, and it's not unlike what the city did with the zoning code with marijuana uses, and just using the zoning code to prohibit that. And so once they're in the zoning code and you prohibit that or you restrict that and you've defined that, that doesn't mean that you'll never be able to go into a CVS or whatever, but there will not be a specific vape shop set up in the city if it is adopted. So that's really the next step of this.
Okay. And as I said, I'm looking forward to diving into that. Do you anticipate that coming forward at the upcoming P&Z meeting in August?
Yes, I believe that. I think I've got a couple of minor changes to the memo, and
Chris put a big dent on the legislation already. And we did this similar, if you recall, we did that similar with some other particular uses, outdoor recreational use. And similar pre-quarry, we did something very, from a zoning standpoint, without less the moratorium to address massage parlors.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we've already got it teed up and ready to go to P&Z.
Yep. So we'll have it in August.
Okay.
That's specific.
That's great. And again, I know that what you'll present there will be well researched and reflective of other municipalities in the area. I'm one piece of this that a couple of things that are complicated from my point of view is the difficulty in regulating this in general. I think, the states are having a hard time. I'm not sure how they prevent, under 18 I need to do a little bit more research on this myself to better understand that. But there's something about full restriction of a independent business that doesn't necessarily leave a good taste in my mouth either. So similar to what we did with retail warehousing, looking at it from a land use perspective, because really looking at it from a morality perspective is more difficult. And when you look about municipal boundaries, you mentioned Sims Township, Miami Township. It's not as if our kids aren't going to be able to go, in close proximity to find these types of things as well. So I just want to make sure that we're looking at it holistically, from lots of different lenses.
Absolutely. And I know that with Miami Township kind of working hand in hand with the city, I think the timing is very similar in that regard. The bulk of the Loveland City School District is in, the city, and Miami Township, it's a huge area.
Right.
And so that is very helpful. Unfortunately, we can't wade outside of our boundaries. I wish we could sometimes, but maybe nonetheless that this might give some impetus to take, maybe another adjoining community might see the success of that or whatever ends up happening, and then the schools can help with that as well. So I don't think the conversation's over by any stretch of the imagination.
I would just add one thing, and Chief Gabrielson could do it. We're not only looking at it, Joe Braun is working with the police department, and we're doing, inversion program for the mayor's court. I believe we just had a case on that. So the city having a mayor's court does give them another avenue that maybe a township wouldn't have. And I think that helps. That was brought forth to Joe and to Mike from our school superintendent. So he's trying to put out as many different avenues as possible because, as he stated to Corey, it's clearly the largest disciplinary issue in not only the high school, right? It was
Across all age.
across all age.
Yep. And, coming from a township, I can attest the mayor's court is an incredible resource for us.
Yes.
So.
Thanks for that point, because it's not as if there's a silver bullet, right, to curtail this, but doing things like diversion programs and zoning regulations are ways to affect that. So thank you again. Looking forward to the P&Z meeting.
Can I ask another question?
Mr. Blair, go ahead.
Let me see if I have the inference. Are you suggesting that there are locations where a minor is busted with vaping materials and gets referred to a mayor's court?
The schools, they're working on
Juvenile inversion.
diversion, and that's very common. Diversion programs are very common.
Okay.
Every tool that the city's trying to help.
Anyone else? The
Mr. Hart.
Mr. Hart, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in quickly, just from the perspective of the schools and seeing firsthand the types of things we're dealing with, what Mr. Broadwater is referring to, all the way down to the fifth grade students that we're dealing with. This is becoming a problem. It's pervasive. It's been in schools for a long time now, and it's not getting better. No matter it seems like no matter what we're doing, we need all the help we can get. So this seems like an appropriate step. I know it's not a silver bullet. I understand what Mr. Bateman's saying in terms of restricting businesses and private business. I understand that makes total sense to me. It didn't seem to me like this is like we're kicking out people that are already here. Is not the way I'm understanding it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Wright. The intention is not to kick out people that are already in town.
No, you're correct. The moratorium would just stay new applications for right now while planning and zoning looks at it.
And that seems like a responsible approach to combat. It's almost like traffic. I think of a little bit incremental change to keep moving the ball forward here a little bit at a time. That hopefully over time, with the help of some of the things, the diversionary programs Mr. Braun's working on, and the other approach would be all these little pieces, hopefully with the educational pieces that go into it, hopefully we can start making a bigger dent in what is nearly a health crisis for our kids right now. So I appreciate this. I think it's the absolute right path to take. And I'm interested to see what P&Z comes up with as they go through there.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Yeah, I can't imagine that Loveland's the only school district that's approaching public officials to sound the alarm. I know it's occurring throughout the country, and it's a really kind of an insidious problem. It was born of the pandemic, where a lot of businesses failed, especially small ones, and these small shops are perfect for selling products, these vaping products, and they are definitely, you know, things that can become addictive and are still harmful. I mean, especially because there's nicotine added to these materials at a lot of times. And so here, somebody's not smoking a conventional cigarette, getting both tars and nicotine, but they're still getting nicotine by vaping. And yeah, there's a article I provided to Mr. Wright that I just ran across in the Atlantic, and it talks about how these shops have sort of come to control or monopolize the retail landscape, and they're doing a great business. And one of the reasons why is that's suggested, at least for some states, that where the laws aren't real clear on how decriminalized marijuana is, or whether or not it's recreationally approved. Different states have taken different positions on it. Ohio has not approved recreational use, but there's known to be kind of a gray market for marijuana sales that occurs in vape shops. So that's obviously an under the table type of arrangement, and I'd hate to see that happen. The other thing is I think is important to note is the reason why Kroger's and Walmart and the big retailers haven't entered into this field is because they know it's harmful, and there's huge moral problems with selling those things to the public, but in particular kids. And I would just note that the FDA is trying to banish these products. That there's the Juul had this huge market share that's now been eroded because of the pushback on its dominance in the market, and the dangers posed by it that not only comes from nicotine but from other elements that are in the vaping that's taken in through the mouth. So yeah, I would also just point out these things are not easy to get, obviously, from the big box retailers, but it's not also anything you can get from Amazon. And it's, again, for the same reason. They don't want to be morally known as that. The U.S. Postal Service won't ship vaping products or e-cigarettes. FedEx and UPS all turn it down. So, I mean, I think there's more than enough reasons for us to sound the alarm bell or hear the alarm bell that we're hearing. And I think eventually these products might be legislated out of existence, maybe on the federal and state level. So 180 days, let's look at this harder. Let's look at it closely. Let's see what we want to do about it. And the place to go is the zoning committee, and see what recommendations they make.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel about it. So does someone want to read the full ordinance?
Ordinance establishing a 180-day moratorium on the acceptance of all applications and the issuance of any permits for any type of smoke, tobacco, electronic cigarette, vaping, or CBD business or use within any zoning district established within the city of Loveland, Ohio, and declaring an emergency.
Any further discussion before we call the roll? Seeing and hearing none, want to go ahead and do that, please?
Mr. Ori?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps?
Yes.
Mr. Ping?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Mr. Hart?
Yes.
Ordinance 74 is adopted by a vote of 6-0.
We have another first reading. Has that one been mentioned?
I don't know if Dave wants to.
No,
Oh,
actually,
it's scheduled municipal positions. Yeah,
you
I
want to
got
cover that, Dave?
Yeah. So this legislation in front of City Council is an ordinance. 2 readings is requested. This would modify our scheduled municipal positions, taking 2 positions that are currently in pay range 1 and moving them to pay range 2, real quickly, the schedule of municipal positions is a pretty important item as far as city operations. It's used in many aspects of what we do. It lists all of our non-bargaining positions, the number allotted for each position, whether it's classified or unclassified, and sets corresponding pay ranges. So we use this pretty exclusively throughout our operations. When we deal with personnel, we deal with payroll, when we deal with evaluations, and we deal with annual raise increases and so on and so forth. We typically bring this to you every 3 years to set the pay ranges in conjunction with what we do with our collective bargaining agreement with our police lieutenants and our police officers. Throughout that, if you've noticed, we've made some other changes. We created a couple new positions, a police chief recently, assistant public works superintendent. We modified our water plant operator to make a water plant superintendent, and a few other items. If you recall, recently we've made a few changes to some titles so they were more specific to how that job currently works. And one of the other things we do is we correct pay ranges. And I can tell you that I've been with the city for 9 years. I've been in public service for 39 years. And I've never worked with the group of what we have right now. And I think it's important to stress one of the biggest qualities the city has is our staff. I mean that police, fire, the people that work here, people that work at public works. And so a big part of what I have to do is to make sure that we keep good employees, because we all know how disruptive it can be when there is a significant change. So obviously my job is to keep an eye on those items. And I focused on two class pay range 1 employees, which is we only have 2 positions that are in pay range 1. That's our customer service specialist and our permit specialist. That is Mandy Lucas and Becky Noel. And those positions, I feel we need to move up to a 2. Why do you do that? It increases their annual raise, but it also gives, for example, Mark would evaluate the customer service representative. Corey would evaluate the permit representative, and it gives them more flexibility to give them incentive raises based on high quality or quality evaluations. So I will tell you that both of those employees, Mandy, customer service representative, she's the first face that most people see when they come in City Hall. She coordinates. She actually stepped up and took over, helps Mark with the payroll. When we do the payroll, she obviously, she's part of many items. She does all the procurement in the city. I don't want to go into many details, but she's actually proven herself to be a heck of an employee. Becky Newell's our permit specialist, juggles constantly everything that goes on from a permitting standpoint in the building department, electrical permits. You know, if you remember, the city is a one-stop shop, and our residents in our building, people love it because everything is here. People will tell us, I like the city because when I come in for a permit, I'm getting all my permits here. And that's something that actually Eva put together some years ago. So at the end of the day, this may seem like more of a housekeeping item, but it's really not, because we know what our neighboring communities do. We know that we lose employees to neighboring communities. And these are 2 employees that I don't think we need to lose. So I'm simply created a new 2. Just basic math, took the difference between the 1s and the 3s, set it over a 3-year period of time, and that is the exhibit that you see. We'll keep one existing, but right now those 2 will go from a 1 to a 2.
Any comments or questions, Mr. Blair?
Mr. Kennedy, do you have backups for these folks?
Yes, I do in the utility department for Becky. For Mandy. They are all cross-trained and can handle vacations and backup times. The building and zoning department is sort of split between the building and the zoning. Eva would be a backup to Becky. Corey would also be a backup to Becky. Those would be the 2 keys. But they came in, both of these people are unique in one way. They came in with one position and have grown those positions by taking on other items to do it. Rather than simply saying, this is my job, this is what I'll do, they've both taken on new items
Sure.
exclusively.
Sure. So is there notionally a need for an additional employee
Uh,
or two?
I
I mean, the thought of Mr. Wright dealing with building permits scares the hell out of me.
I'll have to talk to Mr. Wright about it and to Mark. We're pretty well covered in the utility billing department. We really do. We have a lot of backup. We have some change coming to us. But I think the fact that Corey did that, I meant that it's not beneath them, but I get what you're saying. Let me talk to him. But yeah, they're just very valuable. And I look at what they're paid. I look at what could be tempting to go to another city. And then I look at how disruptive that could be to our operations because they are both very important to what we do every day. And
if you, I mean, cross training all your folks is commendable, and that helps all of them gather valuable skills as well. At some point, you've got more people cross trained, but you need more employees doing individual jobs if they're doing multiple jobs themselves currently.
right, you're right.
Okay,
That's good. We're right in the middle of budget time.
Any other comments, Mr. Ori?
Outside of the ordinance that we're going to talk about or vote on, yeah, I just want to say that I know both the employees, Andy and Becky, and they both prefer to be in that position.
We really preach that customer service thing, and it sounds a little corny, but it actually is something that everyone that works for the city gets. The public works down. Definitely you see it with the police department. Corey had it in his old community, brought it here. So I think it's pretty important that the days of this is the way government runs and take it or leave it versus treating residents as customers is the wave that it should be, and they all get it. And definitely those two do. So.
Mr. Hart?
So, just so I understand, are we moving I'm all in favor of paying good people what they're worth, and it seems like that's what we're doing here, which is the right thing to do, I think. If these two individuals were to leave, would we replace, where would their replacements go? Did that question make sense?
What you mean in terms of
One or two.
Oh, they would likely come in at one. I'm not abolishing the one. They would probably start as a one. These two employees have deserved that go into a two because of their own actions. So,
sure. And that makes perfect sense to move.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we're moving the individual and not the position, because the individual has earned the accolade and the bump up for sure.
I get what you're saying.
The position, though, is still a position.
Yes, I mean, yes, I agree. And Misty's another example of that. I mean, it's what you've created since you've been here. Government, unfortunately, can allow and foster sometimes, the bare minimum. And when you don't, and when you almost to a fault where you get used to it, and when you see it not being in that kind of standard, it's very refreshing. And I think that's what we have throughout the city. So,
Anyone else? Just the one comment. I think it's smart to keep the 10 categories and retain the one, because in the future there may be a position that somebody would fit into that.
if either of these two would leave, both of these positions would go back into the one pay range and be advertised accordingly for that, for any advertisement as pay range ones.
Do you want to read the ordinance then?
Ordinance modifying the pay range for the customer service specialist and the permit specialist positions and repealing ordinance 2023-16.
So this is the first reading. We'll vote on it at the next meeting. All right. Part of the packet included the mayor's court report and the building and zoning report. Any comments or observations about those? Hearing none. I don't think there are any committee minutes or reports that are attached. Any city council reports or comments from staff? None at this time. I know I can refer to some things that have happened in the life of the city in the last week or so. The most notable one being July 4th. It was another successful celebration in downtown Loveland. There were a number of sponsors. I'll read them real quickly. BF Realty, Oasis Turf and Tree, Premier Tumbling and Dance, McCluskey Chevrolet, Eads Fence, Cappy's, Strauss Troy, Paxton's Grill, Ramsey's Trailside, Bond Furniture and Design, BRS Insurance, Choice One Engineering, Katie Miracle Agency, Loveland Lifestyle Magazine, McCabe Lumber, Mike's Car Wash, Railway, Barbershop, Tano Bistro, and Catering, and WSI. That's, I think, a testament to how the community wants to sponsor this, and on an ongoing fashion, we do a great job. Obviously, it's not possible without the city's event planning committee. The members of that committee are Nancy Duff, Patty Petticini, Sherry Spirakoulis Fenning, Christina Juranic, Adam Juranic, Vicky Larcombe, Ben Capodogley, Mandy Christman, Aaron Harper, Robin Guillen, Danielle Camerood, Krista Rose, Becky Noel, and Misty Clark. Thank you, one and all, for that. They're not alone in terms of city representation. The departments all do their part to make this event run smoothly. So police, fire, public works, and city hall staff all deserve credit for us as well. Let's see, upcoming events in the life of the city. There's a concert in the park series that continues this month with the School of Rock performing on Sunday, July 16th. On July 23rd, that's the next Sunday, the city's rescheduled the Elvis tribute show that was to be in June but got rained out. Both concerts will be at 6 p.m. in Nisbet Park. As always, for all information about these and other community events, visit the website www.loveandlifeloveland.com. So with that, I believe we are going to need a motion to go into executive session. Does somebody want to make that?
I'll move to go into executive session under Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22 G2 to consider the purchase of property.
Is there a second?
Second.
Call a roll, please.
Vice Mayor Phelps,
Yes.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair,
Yes.
Mr. Hart,
Yes.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, we Okay, we're back on the record, having come back from executive session. I don't believe there's any further business, so I'll
Move to adjourn.
read the roll, please.
Mr. Ping,
Yes.
Mr. Bateman,
Yes.
Mr. Blair.
Yep.
Mr. Ori.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Phelps.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.